I think in some ways we just have to keep open hands. We know we can feel all the potential. The potential can't be taken away. It's always there. But we just have to keep a loose hand on what format that takes, and so it's not like we can fail to expand to that next level. The question at this point really remains is, are we going to do that in the body? Mm-hmm. Because death is not an endpoint. And if we actually do, seemingly fail to wake up here and make this transition through the birth canal, and we go extinct in the next 60 to 120 years, every hospice passage I've ever seen is the most expansive thing I've ever seen. Yeah, it is startling how a few seconds of lucid thought right before death can break epigenetic and familial patterns of behavior, and you can see reconciliation happen from this moment of clarity as that soul is stepping across to the other side of the veil, seeing the entire truth, bringing that back for a moment, wakes up from the coma, says the truth, dies minutes later. The expansion is so complete on that other side. And I think that it is relevant to the galaxy, to the planet, that we do this in the body. But I also don't hold out a sense of failure for any of it. I think we will have walked the path that will allow for expansion to happen. And if it takes another 4 billion years, it's almost irrelevant in a galactic timeline that knows no time. And so it's so easy to place human metrics of success or failure on this birthing process now. And if we end up with a head too big, stuck on ego, and we can't get out that birth canal, that might be exactly the journey that these 9 billion souls by that time need to express themselves in, that sudden escape from the old paradigm.
That's again the ultimate zoom out, right? Zooming out of time and zooming out of this win-loss kind of perspective, which can give you a deep peace. And then what you end up fighting for is you end up fighting for a love of life, a love of this life, the life that we know, a life of smell and taste and touch, the life where I can kiss my wife and have a cup of tea with my friends here and my brothers and go out and jump on an obscenely too bouncy trampoline and get scared and do these things that are amazing. Like, it's amazing what we have. And so, yes, it's going to be okay no matter what. But fuck, it's special right now. And the earth is so beautiful. Like, what if after all of the nuclear plants go and there's all this nuclear waste and stuff, what if roses never come back on the next time, What if that's just like, this was their go, just like the dinosaurs had their run, but like roses are never back again. Like, there's a loss, and there may be no roses on any other planet, probably not, because they're a part of this earth at this time, just like Triceratops. Probably this was the only place and the only time that a Triceratops existed, and by no fault of their own, they were gone. They had their moment, and it's like preserving this beautiful moment, but not holding it so tightly that it's a failure if they go. But to me, that just means smell the roses, like play with the cats, like kiss the lovers, live, like no matter what, don't forget to live, so that the universe will have this record and this memory that people here on Earth, they lived. If nothing else, just live. Live,
Yeah, it's not. And that doesn't come from fear of not making it. Like Zach was saying, that's not what drives it. Yeah. It's the urge to be fully alive.
It's intrinsic. The very first baby of birth was by accident, alone, was by accident. It was in the back of a van rushing through Manila in the middle of the night. A woman had been dropped off at my aunt's front door at 3 o'clock in the morning and ran. They rang the doorbell and ran. Answered the door, and this woman was hemorrhaging. She was not able to speak. She's nonverbal. She was neurologically handicapped at birth. Had probably never spoken in her life. Severely affected. She's probably in her 20s. Had been raped. Got pregnant. She had no idea what was going on. No idea what pregnancy would be. We had no idea, what her situation was. But put her in the van, and my aunt's in the front driving to the hospital. I'm sitting next to this woman, and I'm applying towels to the whole vaginal area, just trying to keep the bleeding contained. And suddenly watching her stomach, into full contractions. And I pulled the towel away, just trying to figure out, I'm yelling to my aunt, like, I think she might be in labor. I think something's going on. She's like, can you see the cervix? Blah, blah, blah. Pull the towel away. And there's an infant emerging from this woman that's no larger than my hand from head to toe. Blue as blue can be, and perfect. Like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning rushing through, so just like slanting light and everything else, and it's holding this thing in my hand. I had no gloves, anything, and the feeling of this newborn's skin on my hand was unfathomable. It was so soft, like I didn't have the sensory detail to pick it up. And I was looking at this thing in awe, because even though I couldn't quite see it, I could see that every single fingernail, though almost invisible, was perfect. And like, that was the level of detail that had been so masterfully designed that it would emerge like this. And I told my aunt, it's not breathing. And she said, it's not going to breathe. Like, it was super premature. Like, the woman didn't even really look pregnant. By the size of the baby, she was probably 23 weeks at the most. And we're cruising. I didn't want to set the baby down. It didn't feel right. So I'm holding this presumably dead baby. And suddenly there's like a weird little movement in my hand. And I look down, and this thing is taking a breath. And it takes maybe 3 more breaths, tiny little breaths, but I can feel it like through my whole hand. And what it reminded me of is when you had that statement of live, just live. This freaking little thing with a mother who isn't a mother, who doesn't know who she is or where she is or how this all happened. I think it started taking breath and then lets out a scream. That was the tiniest freaking thing you've ever heard. Like, maybe if you pictured a baby mouse screaming, but it was so human, completely human in that scream. And it just tore me into shreds. I was just like, could not believe the humanity in this thing that had just emerged, so perfectly designed. It was fully there. It was fully alive with that one scream. It was too quiet for my aunt to hear. I was crying too hard to say anything. And I just, at that point, covered it up to try to keep it warmer in my hand. And we got to the hospital a few minutes later, and we kind of handed off the whole situation. In the short amount of time that was there, I'd cut the umbilical cord, and the result of that experience, that baby ended up dying a couple of days later. Mother ended up surviving. It has left me with this sense of, it is intrinsic to the human soul to freaking live. Mm-hmm. Mm. Just as it is intrinsic to the human DNA to make a perfect fingernail. You cannot separate the drive for life from the word human. We are frickin' drive for life. And we have frickin' persisted, And so if you look at the, maybe 10 million years of Homo erectus and a couple 100,000 years of Homo sapiens sapiens and all this stuff, like, there's been some shit go down, and whenever I start to get overwhelmed by anything in my life, but certainly these last couple of years, my favorite way to decompress my anxiety is watching World War II documentaries. And there's something about the sound of dropping bombs from a B-52 and those grainy images of the viewfinder from the bottom of the B-52 of somebody sighting a bomb. That reminds me of just how much we have survived. We have tried to bomb the shit out of each other so many times. We have tried to eliminate life so many times, and it just can't be done. Human is the highest form of life drive that we've seen on the planet, I believe. And for that, we have an enormous amount of light, and I think those are probably inseparable. We have so much light within the biology of human that we have that drive for life. And we do have all that that drive for life, and therefore we have more light. So it's a beautiful, like, endocrine loop, I think, of the water structure of our biology is so much different than reptile. We literally can hold more white light in the water structure of a human cell. It's referred to as like this third density. And, you know, a lot of the animal life and other living forms on plants are in this first or second density. And so we are this highest light form on the planet right now. And it's interesting that at that last great extinction, they didn't struggle back. They, being the mother, the father, whatever the divine is, didn't struggle back to Triceratops. In fact, we moved from reptiles to avian to mammals to humans. We moved from ferns to flowering plants and deciduous trees. And so there was such an abundance of life that came after the wipeout. And it happens because of the effect of the virome. The viruses are the genetic potential of life ahead. Viruses are a data bank of new potential. When there's stress put on an organism, it starts making new variants of its own genetics to find loopholes for adaptation, for more biodiversity to occur. So it could be that we are pushing for a much higher life form on the planet as a species, and we are currently shedding massive amounts of viruses along with the pigs and the cows that are suffering under our food system and the microbes that we're slaughtering our soil systems with all the herbicides and pesticides. And for all of that existential stress on the planet, we are creating massive new genomic potential on this planet. And there's a possibility we get to stay and play in that new genetic array and see what comes forward. It may be a new version of human, or it could be a leap as big as Triceratops to Aubrey Marcus.